got swelling so bad her face is deformed. She says, I'm healed. Her swelling was gone. Edgar Cayce kept saying they're going to find scrolls near the Dead Sea. There's nothing in the scrolls that ever mention Jesus in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing in the scrolls about healing in any way, shape, or form. All the scrolls are the Torah. And so much so that when I painted a picture of him and his wife, right now, one of the things that I remember most in my regression is his eyes on the cross, looking into his eyes. He's got nails through his wrists. He had a rope around his throat, and he had nails through the side of his ankles into the sides of the cross. And they lift him up, and it drops into that hole. And what he did in that moment was this. He looked at me, and he went, like to say, well, that hurt. It was to make me feel better.
That regression was painful to listen to, the way you were crying watching Yahshua. Because if he is someone who's so good at manifestation, he could have pulled himself out of this entire situation, right?
Paul never met Jesus. When I say Paul, you'll hear me say Jesus instead of Jeshua. Because Paul invented Jesus, created the division between all religions. Luke and Paul, they are 50% of the New Testament. Luke never met Jesus. James, the brother of Jeshua, literally calls Paul the liar. I think the word kundalini is just a dogma as well. But one time while going out of body, I decided to try astral travel. So I go over and I'm like, purple rhinoceros, purple rhinoceros, purple rhinoceros, purple rhinoceros.
Did you ever see Yahshua getting fearful at all about the crucifixion?
That's what Jeshua taught. Think not upon tomorrow, be here today. How did Judas die? So in the Bible, there's two different versions of how he died. One of them was he threw the 30 pieces of silver down and he went and he hung himself.
Yahshua was with Mary Magdalene and he was married.
Because in my regression, he called her Ishti, which is the Hebrew word and the Aramaic word for wife. Literally peppered the New Testament with Pharisee teachings.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Celestevolve podcast. Today I have someone who in his past life walked with Yahshua. And his name is John Davis. Welcome to the podcast, John. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to people all over the world about how we can all be a loving person.
John, I had the most fun researching about you, and I just couldn't get enough of your videos. So I watched every podcast video that you came in, then I watched a lot of your YouTube videos, and I thought that, okay, fine. If I watch all of those videos, probably I wouldn't need to listen to the regression. But then the regression. But last night, before going to bed, I said, okay, let me listen to it. And I bought the regression. And the regression was mind-blowing. It was even better than all the other podcasts, all the videos that you had done.
It was mind-blowing for me, too.
Exactly. When I was listening to your regression, you speak about that first time you meet Jesus. I know you've spoken about it before, but I still want to hear it from you where you say...
Oh, my gosh. It's so impactful. It's so impactful.
Yeah.
You know, my regression was weird because I came from a Catholic background. And so I had all that guilt and dogma, and I had a mom who liked to spread that guilt and that dogma. Right.
Hey, like everyone.
right. And when the first person told me about my past life, it was a psychic named Sharon Prince. And she told me about that. And I was like, get away from me, lady. You're crazy. I don't want to have anything to do with that. No. I'm a Catholic, right? Well, by the time I got past to the point where I actually had the regression, I was still skeptical. And the funny thing is, the reason I got the regression at all is because I was trying to avoid it. And what happened was I kept having psychics walk up to me out of the blue and tell me. And I eventually had 19 of them tell me. And then I was like, and so finally I was like, you know what? God, universe, consciousness, yada, yada, whatever you want to call yourself, you send me a direct message rather than coming through somebody else. Well, you know, the universe has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine handed me a book called Edgar Cayce on the Millennium. And I was like, okay, let's see what Edgar Cayce has to say about the millennium. I wasn't even thinking about anything. Page 32, it says, John the Beloved will again be named John. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay. Another psychic just told me, but indirectly. Right? So I booked the regression, and like you said, in that regression moment, I'm on the beach, I'm standing there, I'm feeling the rocks beneath my feet. I'm smelling the fish in the air. I'm having full sensory awareness. It was like my consciousness shifted. It was like I was physically there, but the thoughts in my head were the conversation I was having with the regressionist. It was really strange. But in the regression, I see people running down the beach, and there's a crowd down the beach. And I go down the beach towards the crowd, and as I get closer and closer to that crowd, I start to feel the purity of love. I start to feel this feeling coming. I don't even see this person yet. I just see a crowd. And I start to lose my breath. And in my regression, you hear me going, oh my God, you can feel him. Oh my God, you can feel him. And I push into that crowd, and there in front of me is that guy.
Yeah.
Now, I painted that picture in 2000, 6 months after the regression, from memory. So he looks at me like he'd known me my entire life. And he kind of gets this kind of like, oh, my friend. It was kind of that look. And he walks over, he raises up his hand, he just sets it on my chest. And John of old, I'm John Davis, John of old, that guy, he left the physical illusion and went to the purity of love, to the greater awareness of his divinity, and with his oneness with God. And in that moment, I'm there, and I'm like, oh my God! And what you don't know about my regression, I'm going to tell you a big secret. To look around, make sure you know to hear this.
You probably said it somewhere or the other.
I'm sure. And I probably told that joke before. Right. I cut out about 8 minutes of me moaning from my regression because I thought it sounded a little too, I don't want people to hear me moan. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just in this purity of love. I'm feeling this experience. At one point, she says, "Would you like to move on?" I said, "Not now." I literally told her to stop.
Is having too much fun here.
Oh my God. Finally, she says, "What is the next most important moment?" And that's a huge question for a regressionist to ask. But the next most important moment was feeling my illusion of separation from God, from that. In other words, my fears, my anxieties, my stresses. Because had I never come to know the feeling, I could never know the purity of love. Because you can't know something without knowing the baseline to measure against. And so coming here in the physical was all about the idea of feeling that love fully by feeling its absence, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when Buddha says the secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear, I completely understand it now. Because we come here, we experience our fears, and then we overcome our fears. So, but that feeling that I felt in just walking up to the man, it was breathtaking. It literally took the breath away, right? Now, if you watch my videos at all, you'll know that my favorite word in all time is exhale. I say exhale all the time, right? Well, that exhale, when we have a fear response, we literally suck a bunch of air into our lungs and hold it. That's the primal fight or flight response. So to be fearless means you have to completely release and come back to that place without fear. And so breathtaking in someone so pure in their love takes your breath away because it's a fearless state.
Have you felt that sort of love anywhere else ever?
Well, it's so interesting because, and I don't know if you've heard this story, but when I was 19, long before my regressions and psychics or anything else telling me, I walked into a convenience store and bought something, and the cashier gave me $5 too much change. And I'm walking out to my car, and I'm looking, oh my God, he gave me $5. So I went back inside, and I said, hey, I'm sorry, you gave me $5 too much. And the next guy in line says, well, there's something you don't see every day, an honest person. And I felt the purity of love come all over my body, just like on that beach when I was 19. And And it was so different. It was so strange. And I was like, what is this thing? Right. And I walk out of the store and I'm walking to my car. And at 19 years old, not even knowing what the heck I was saying at the time, I said, Jesus, is that you? Like I had recognized that feeling. And then suddenly it happened again. Now, to show you that's what we call true epiphany, right? My father was not a kind man, but one of the things that he was a couple of things he was a racist and a homophobic. And he was also an abuser, and I was the one that he was abusing, right? So I was doing my best to get my father's approval, and I was becoming a racist and a homophobic myself. But right after that happened, the next day, I wasn't racist. I wasn't homophobic. I had lost all of those biases that next day. Didn't help my relationship with my father. but that next day, I was completely without the fears that those biases entail. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I would think that feeling that you got is what everybody is trying to recreate through ayahuasca retreat or breath work, shamanic healing, Reiki. They are trying to recreate that experience. So I'm still asking the same thing, that you've had it, but is there anything at all that closely resembles what that feels like?
Well, okay, so you and I have had a really good conversation so far. And we were really laughing hard prior to us coming onto this experience. When you are laughing entirely, completely, you are completely present and you're completely fearless. But most people don't acknowledge the fact that is the fearless present moment where the divinity of God lives. When you're laughing, your goosebumps rise on your arms. Look at those goosebumps rising up on my arms, just even talking about it, right? That moment is not only your direct connection to God, but it's a God. Like I say, I'm going to keep saying God and not having to justify it. The thing is, one of the things I said in my Regression, which was the most profound thing for me, was it's all so simple. We have a hard time comprehending it. Right now, something you just said. Well, when you were asking the question, you said something so clearly that I don't think you truly understood that you asked so clearly. You kept saying, people keep trying this, and they 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 keep trying this. Well, that's the present moment declaration that you're not doing it now. Trying. And so they're not present. They're not in the amen moment. Amen means so be it. It means right here, right now, it's done. Here's an analogy. I'm going to give you an analogy that kind of explains this better. And this is the struggle people have, because people have a hard time accepting that they are already divine, that they already are connected. And so imagine if you took a boat and you anchored a boat in the middle of a river. Now that boat is stationary because it's anchored, but the water is flowing past the boat. Now behind the boat, there's a wake, there's a swirl, there's motion in the water because of the boat. 100 feet in front of the boat, no shape in the water at all, just a bunch of water up there. But that water comes to the boat and it hits the bow of the boat and it parts and it reveals the shape of the boat in the river. Okay. Now you're in your boat, I'm in my boat, all of your listeners are in their own darn boat, right? The water is the substance of the universe that all of our experiences play out in. Science would call it the atoms, the matter. Christians would call it the image of God. It is the substance of the universe. The motion of the water coming towards the boat is how time works. It's coming to us. We are not traveling through it. And that's easy to prove because your past is just nothing but a collection of present moment memories. And your future is just a place where you set goals for your next present moment. So time is coming to you, right? The wake and the swirl behind the boat, that's just the results of all your present moments, thoughts, words, and actions. But the shape of your boat is what you believe about this precise moment. And most of the people I talk to think they're in a sinking dinghy, bucketing out the water, trying not to go under. And I think I'm on the deck of a three-masted schooner sipping a margarita. Right? What you believe about the now is what you will experience. In biblical terms, when Moses asked the burning bush its name, the burning bush said, I am. Not I was, not I will be. Not I was, not I will be. The concept of faith means what I believe about this moment, in this moment, right? So it comes back to the very simple idea of what do you believe about this moment. And now, can I find this anywhere? Sure, I can. The Buddha says, what you think you become, you create your world. The Bhagavad Gita says, thought by thought, you forge your destiny. Therefore, to keep your mind focused upon the positive rather than the negative is considered the austerity of the mind. The Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he. Shakespeare said, there's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And you only have conscious thought in one moment, and it's your present moment. So it's a matter of realizing that as you rend control of your thoughts, you rend control of your destiny. And what's really interesting is that if we break out of spirituality and into science a little bit, 85 to 90% of our day, we're in our subconscious mind. And the words that are falling out of our mouth all day long are coming from our subconscious mind, right? So the best way to discover what your subconscious is thinking is to start listening to what you're saying. And there's the first lines of the book of John, which, by the way, best darn book in the Bible. Thank you very much.
Show up.
Anyway, it says, in the beginning is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Your words, your thoughts, your beliefs go out to God. God reflects those words, thoughts, and beliefs in the image around you, and you are created in God's image. So it's a matter of understanding that, the Bible says that whatever you ask in God's name is granted if you have faith, right? And God's name is I am, right? But what it doesn't say is whatever you ask in God's name is granted if you have faith and you do this mantra, this technique, this thing, these are the dogmas of the new age that people are using, right? And also, even the concept of trying a technique, the trying means you're not doing it now, but the technique is literally based upon the idea that it's ahead of you. And spirituality is not a technique or a process. It's a being. And we come back to being in the loving now, right? And then we start to create. What did Jeshua say in the Bible? The last thing he says, I leave you one commandment, love one another. It really is that simple, just to simply be the love in the world. I think that's why they called him John the Beloved, because he kept saying, be loved, be loved, be loved. Right? Did that answer your question?
That did, because this is what I feel too with right now, because I have the podcast, I get invited to all of these healing sessions, etc. A lot of different kind of things, but I've never had the experience of truly feeling God unless I'm here in the corner of my bedroom. Not by doing the shamanic drums or the Reiki. That, like, nowhere have I felt the feeling I get when I'm alone with myself. So then John, does it mean that, you talk about how we have to recognize the divinity in ourselves? Do you feel that you are divine and you are God?
Well, I believe you are, and I believe I am as well.
But there's a little bit of a doubt there, isn't it?
Not for me.
No. Okay.
Well, let's break out of spirituality and let's do some empirical evidence and science. Okay, you ready for this?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Everything that you're looking at in the room that you're in is made of atoms. Now, and atoms, 90% are empty space, and the rest is an energy event in motion. So the wall beside you is atoms, the air between you and the wall is atoms, and your eyes are atoms. So all you really are is your consciousness, and the rest of this is the illusion of belief. And when your eyes are open, you're looking at the image of God. And so as I sit here and I look at your face, I'm looking at the image of God looking back at me. And, and that understanding means that I can give God fear, I can give God love, and if I give love, God reflects love in return because that's what I'm giving. And in the Bible, he says, the Father and I are one, and you must become one with me as I am with the Father. It's always about coming back to that oneness within. You know, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Greater works than I have done, you will do. It is your faith that heals you. You want to hear an interesting healing story?
Yeah, sure.
So I was speaking at the London, Ontario Unity Church, up 2004 or 5, something like that. And all day long, people are coming in and they're going, oh, help me find my soulmate, help me win the lottery, all those things, and I'm like, oh, all right. Halfway through the day, a woman walks in the side door. And not the door that everybody's coming in, but comes in the side door. She's got swelling so bad, her face is deformed. The side of her face is like this. Her teeth are pushing between her lips. She had an infection all through her jaw. You could see the pain on her face. And she had come there because the building I was in was a former convent, and she was hoping the nuns were there so she could borrow money to get her teeth fixed. But the nuns were no longer there, and I was. And my friend Holly brought her back to the room that I was in. And I looked at her and I said, what's your faith? What do you believe? And she said, I'm a Christian. Now, I know I can talk a good Christian game. My mom had her master's degree in liturgy, and I did 12 years of CCD. Thank you very much. So I had that one down. I said, so, the Bible says whatever you ask in God's name is granted. Do you believe that? She said, yes. I said, so why don't we just ask? She said, what? I said, why don't we just ask? She said, how do we ask? We can ask. How do we ask? I said, well, how about something like, thank you, God, for the perfect teeth I am receiving. Amen. And she said, okay, let's do that. So we grabbed hands. Together we're saying it. Thank you, God, for the perfect teeth I am receiving. Amen. We said it like 4 or 5 times, and she got more and more animated as we were going. About the 4th or 5th time I stopped, I said, when you say thank you for something, it's because you believe it's happening now. If I ask for a glass of water, I say thank you when I know the water's coming. So you said, thank you, God, for the perfect teeth. So you actually ask God for perfect teeth. And then you said, I am receiving. So receiving means it's happening now. I said, do you know what the name of God is? She said, Jesus? I said, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says it's I am. And you said, I am receiving. So you just asked for perfect teeth in God's name. And you said you're receiving it. And then you ended that whole thing with amen. I said, do you know what amen means? She says, no. I said, it means so be it. It means right here, right now, it's done. What does that mean? She says, I'm healed. Her swelling was gone. Gone. Now, let me back up. Had she walked into that room and she said I was a Buddhist, I would have said, Buddha says what you think you become. You create your world. Do you believe that? Had she said she was Hindu, I would have said the Bhagavad Gita says thought by thought you forge your destiny. Do you believe that? Had she said she was an atheist, I would have said Einstein said the imagination of previews of life's coming attractions. Do you believe that? I don't care what route she took. All I care about is her present moment belief. And she, in that moment, was convinced of her that she was healed, and she was healed in that moment. And I think it really comes down to understanding that we have complete control of our experience, but our subconscious mind, a little pesky little butthead back there, keeps coming in and messing us up because of our past experiences. But all of those past experiences have some relationship to fear, right? And you remember what Yoda said in Star Wars? He said, "Oh, named must your fears be, before banish them you can." Right?
Yeah.
Named must your fears be. You have to name what you're actually thinking and believing before you can banish it. You have to find that experience. And once you find that experience, and you can go, not doing that anymore. I'm doing this. I'm getting my margarita on my boat. And next thing you know, you're living a life of joyfully receiving as opposed to lacking and in fear.
So when Jesus was healing, how was he doing? And was he also saying, in the name of God, I'm going to heal you now? Because now these days you see pastors and prophets, they're saying that, I rebuke the demon in you, come out of the person, like things like that. It's very,
theatrical.
Theatrical, very theatrical. Like,
yeah. But let's go back. Let's go back to the Bible. It is your faith that heals you. That's the quote. right? It is your faith that heals you. What Jeshua did was he did pretty much what I was just talking about, was helping people find their present moment faith in the moment. And there's a famous story in the Bible. It's actually, I say it's famous. It's a story that no one ever talks about, but it's in there. There's a passing reference to the town of Beth Shean in Israel. And what it says is they did not go into Beth Shean because no healings could happen there. Right? And the reason no healings could happen there is because Beth Shean is really close to Nazareth, and there is no healing from the son of a carpenter. They knew Joseph, right? So that's where the phrase, a prophet will not be known in his own hometown.
Yeah.
Because they know him as this experience. So, but I have a regressive memory because my regression, I had one big regression, but then I had, since then, a certain percentage of people who get regressed have ongoing things that happen. So sometimes somebody will say something and I have this experience. I had a memory of going into a town, I don't know which town it was, and telling people that Jeshua was outside of the town. And if you want a healing, come out to him. And the fact that they said, okay, I'm going to go out to that place is a leap of faith. And by the time they got to him, they were receiving their healing because they had already chosen to go out there to be healed in the first place. And then he just convinced them of their healing in the present moment. Jeshua understood his divinity, and he understood your divinity. And there's a video on my, I think it's on my Recovering Catholic channel, called Jeshua's Healing Method. And it talks exactly about this exact thing. It talks about him being able to convince people of their healing and let their faith heal them. But the famous story of the woman who touched the hem of his garment and was healed.
Yes.
That's because she believed it. She believed she would. All of the methods and modalities work if the person believes it. That's why placebos work, for the same reason. Because their faith is what is healing them. And that's how Jeshua healed. And here's the next thing that happened with Jeshua. He had been doing that so well and so frequently that people started to believe it was him. And so in the belief that it was him, they would come to him and they'd be healed because he healed me. They could feel his loving presence. They could feel his experience. But he would have said, no, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Ye are gods. That's right in the Bible. He's telling you that you are gods. And to me, it's a much more beautiful message because it's not about, worshiping him or putting him on a pedestal. It's about him saying, look what I have found, and you have it too. At one point he says, take heart, I've overcome the world. And when you say take heart, you're telling somebody because you're like, yeah, take heart. You don't have to worry about this. You got this. Is basically what that statement means.
So can you describe what it was like with Yahshua? Was he, because I've heard you say that he was a funny guy and he would make fun of you, etc. Do you remember any specific moments or time with him which is not in the Bible?
Well, I'll tell you a really profound one, but before that, I want to clarify that he wasn't making fun of me. He was making fun with me. So he would, I would do something, say something. He would just give a comment that would make me go, what am I thinking? Right? Oh my God, it's crazy, right? Yeah. So he wasn't making fun of me. He was course correcting me in a way.
There is that book called Jesus and the Essenes, I think, written by Dolores Cannon, where it was a regression. So it says that Yahshua, he was 8 years old. I don't know if it's true or not, but it says that Qumran, he grew up in Qumran when he was young. Let me know if you think this is true or false.
Yeah. No, you're gonna love my answer on this one. No, keep going.
Okay, cool.
You're gonna love my answer on this one.
I'm excited. So he grew up in Qumran from the age of, I think, 8 or 6 or something until the age of 13, etc. So he studied their theology and the books. And then when he goes there, and he graduated faster than all the other kids. So when he's sitting in class and the teacher says something, they said that he would also just look at them like, seriously, is that what it is? And then they would understand, oh, that I don't think that was the case,
Yeah.
the teachers. So
Yeah.
he would just do that, and then they would fix their thought about it. What are your thoughts?
Man. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little history on this,
Okay.
but it's not the history you think I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Edgar Casey was the first one to talk about the Essenes. And he kept saying they're going to find scrolls near the Dead Sea. That's all he said, right? So they find the scrolls. There's nothing in the scrolls that ever mention Jesus in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing in the scrolls about healing in any way, shape, or form. All the scrolls is the Torah. It's the ancient Judaic text, right? 1890s, Madame Blavatsky comes around. She was famous trans medium. She used to, in her 1890s, she used to do all her sessions in the nude with, it was just this really kind of strange experience, right?
The clickbait.
Yeah. But this is 1890s. This is prior to long time ago, right? Well, Madame Blavatsky, she claimed all these things she's done in her life. If she had done all the things that she claimed she did in her life, she would have to be 400 years old, because she claimed to study with the people, with the secret ascended masters in India. She claimed to study with all the shamans of America. She claimed to blah, 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 right on down the line. So she's doing this. She has two people who end up joining with her, and they create something known as the Theosophical Society. Now, the Theosophical Society starts trying to marry Hinduism and Christianity together as one.
Oh.
So they start creating, you have to be a vegetarian, you have to do these, you have to do these, you have to have all these things, right? So what happens is the Theosophical Society really starts pushing this, and they start pushing this idea that he was in a scene when there's no evidence whatsoever that he was ever in the scene. Jeshua would not have probably been in the scene because of the fact that the first warring conflict against Rome was led by the Essenes, was led by John the Essene. And so Jeshua himself would not have been there. There's a term you probably haven't heard, you probably don't know this word, but Mashiach. And what
Mashiach, I thought was, it's written a little bit weird, like Melchizedek or something, but it must be.
Melchizedek was a king.
Oh, okay.
Right? But Mashiach is the word that became Messiah.
Ah, okay.
And in that time period, Mashiach meant an anointed king over a people. It didn't mean some spiritual savior, right? So the Theosophical Society took all these Essenes and the finding of Qumran and all that stuff, and they said, see, this is all true. This is all true. But once again, there's no evidence in any way, shape, or form that that's true. So the Theosophical Society, a guy named Edmund Kelly came out and he started doing this Essene Gospel of Peace. He found this document in the Vatican Library, the Essene Gospel of Peace. It's amazing how the Essene Gospel of Peace starts pushing vegetarianism and all kinds of other little things in there. It's also amazing how the Essene Gospel of Peace was never, ever seen by anybody else but Edmund Kelly. The Vatican denies it ever existed. And so that's tough. Then there's the other one, the Gospel of the Holy 12, which they say is the Essene Gospel, right? Written in 1894 to 1905 as a series of newspaper articles where someone involved with Madame Blavatsky rewrote the New Testament to add vegetarianism.
Oh, right.
Right. So the whole Essene thing is a New Age ideology that has no sense of anything. And Dolores Cannon, now I don't want to bash her. I spoke to her once. She was a very nice woman.
Okay.
But she's not a hypnotherapist. Everyone says she was the most famous hypnotherapist, and her method of she learned hypnosis from a mail order program. She never went to college. She never studied anything like psychotherapy or any of those things. And what she studied was stage hypnosis, which is based upon suggestibility, whereas hypnotherapy is based upon uncovering memory. And her whole technique is based upon this idea of suggestibility. And if you hear some of the people who are using her techniques now, you'll hear them say things like, well, I don't want you to, or they'll actually interject things into the conversation that are literally guiding the experience as opposed to letting the experience unfold. So my story, that's a long way to go, I know, but the Essenes, the whole modern New Age concept of the Essenes is all based on fraud. It's all based on fraud. Yeah. So sorry to ruin that moment for you.
Yeah. I think that was an 11-hour audiobook. 11 hours.
When after my regression, I was studying everything. I read
I get
Jesus and the Essenes, and I did all of it. But then I didn't stop. I just kept researching. And I've been researching now for 26 years. And everything I just said is very well documented.
So which book, now that you've researched all of these books, is there any book that comes any book that is closest to what you think is what Jesus taught?
Well, the thing is, I don't think any book can come to the simplicity of it because it is so simple.
Yeah, it is simple.
When I look at religions and ideologies in the world, I think of them like trains on a track, right? When you're in a train, you will only see what's out the window of the tracks that you're on, right? And so if I'm in Christianity, I'm going to see all the Christian stuff out the window. If I'm in Buddhism, I'm going to see all the Buddhist stuff out the window. If I'm in Judaism, I'm going to see all the Judaism stuff out the window. What Jeshua taught was to get above it all and notice there's lots of tracks, and that they all say pretty much the same thing. And here's the thing that really in all the studies became very clear. When you study them all and you put on your little love goggles and you read the loving parts, they all say the same thing. The second you put the fear goggles on, they all say something different. And the fear goggles always come with dogma and doctrine and technique and modality and method. But those things are getting you to something out of the present moment. But the present moment was where everything is where the infinite is. And so it's a matter of coming here.
When you said this love and fear thing, right? It is true that's why I said I watched all of your videos.
You're the one.
Yeah, I am the one. So I watched all of it. And then when I heard your regression, the way you said so easily that divine revelation comes through the filter of fear. So when it comes through it, you hear what you want to see. It's only when you remove that lens of fear will you get pure revelations. It's so simple.
I said that?
Yeah, you said that. And then you were laughing in the regression because of how simple it was.
Yeah.
And then, so my question would be, and then you said the hardest part is releasing the known, which we know, and then diving into the unknown. And when you dive into the unknown, then you realize that your old life was much harder.
Yeah. There's a I'll tell you an interesting story. So when I had to break free of my subconscious mind, I took a pen and paper and I started writing down everything that was coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And I discovered that I was wanting, needing, hoping, trying, wishing, can't, and how. But the big one was how. Because those methods, those modalities, those techniques are the how, right? But when you're saying, how am I going to do this? That means you're not doing it now. You're not being that enlightenment now. So in early 2000s, again, I got the phone call that every spiritual speaker wanted to get. The Association for Research and Enlightenment wanted me to come speak at Edgar Cayce's house in Virginia Beach. Now, that's a big deal, right?
Edgar Cayce is not alive, right?
Oh, no. He died in 1946.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, wow, that's amazing. You got to go there. Okay.
So they called me up. They said, we'd like you to come speak, because what had happened was Sharon Prince's book, John of Old, John of New, came out. And in 1943, Edgar Cayce said, John the Beloved will again be named John. So that was like revelatory for them. So they said, can you come speak? I said, absolutely. They said, well, when can you come? And I said, I could be there in 8 hours. Right? And they're like, no. Can you come in 3 weeks? I said, absolutely. So I hung up the phone And I neglected to tell them that 2 days earlier, I was in a production of Shakespeare's Henry V playing Exeter, and I had been smacked in the mouth with a broadsword, and my front tooth was cracked in half.
Oh.
Now, I did not want to stand in Edgar Casey's house and say, "How there, I'm John the Beloved, how are you?" with a big gap in the front of my mouth. I didn't want to have that moment, right? This is what I said for myself. This was after that story I told you, healing story I told you earlier. Thank you, God, for the perfect tooth I am receiving. Amen. And I believed it, and I let it go. I gave myself permission a long time ago to see how things happen after the fact.
Yeah.
To enjoy how things happen after the fact. So I just let it go. I ordered my lunch from Jimmy John's. It's a sub shop here in the States. And I turned on my television. I had my sandwich. I bit into that sandwich. The tooth broke the rest of the way off. Now, anybody else would have said, well, that crap didn't work, right? And I said, oh, cool, this is happening fast because this must be the how coming in. Couple more hours goes by. Now, I used to do a comedy sword fighting show at Renaissance festivals. And a couple hours goes by, the phone rings. She says, hi, John, this is the entertainment director of the Florida Renaissance Festival. How are you today? I said, honest to God, my tooth just broke off. She says, John, that's really weird. You would say that to me today of all days. I go, why? She says, I just became president of the Rescue Foundation. I said, I have no idea what that is. The Rescue Foundation is an organization that helps Renaissance Festival entertainers get medical and dental work done for free.
Wow.
And she overnighted me a check, right? The belief in trying to figure out how is the concept of putting limitations around how it comes. It's going to come in the path of least resistance. You know, had that tooth not broken off, had I not said my tooth had broken off, she never would have told me she was the president of the Rescue Foundation. I never would, and it never would have happened, right? So the fact that I even said it was part of the part of that oneness experience. You know, I always loved the idea of it coming through the path of least resistance, and I have no idea what the path of least resistance is.
But you know, you had Edgar Casey's happening in 3 weeks. What if this did not happen in 3 weeks and it happened in the 4th week?
My tooth was already fixed, so it didn't really matter. I don't believe in that linear construct that I am receiving a perfect tooth. And you know, there's a quote in the Bible that says, and I don't remember the exact quote, so I'm going to paraphrase. I'm sorry. It's like, you know, the Father already knows your needs. Right. So when I say I am receiving a perfect tooth, my subconscious knows it because of this event. So it's like I am receiving the perfect tooth. So of course it's going to happen really fast because number one, I didn't limit it with how it was supposed to come. And number two, the expectation that it will happen before that event was already in my subconscious mind.
But it is hard to let go. Do you think there was any method that Yahshua taught to let go and be the way you are?
Yeah. Exhale.
Really?
After the crucifixion in the Bible, he comes to the disciples in the upper chamber. Now, I don't have a memory of this, but this is what the Bible says. He comes to the upper chamber, and what does he do to them? He breathes on them. You know, most people do meditation. I think the word meditation is so overused, you know, because there's so many different versions and forms. I did them. I did the mantras. I did all the meditations, right? I discovered they all led me to one specific moment. It was the moment when I let go of the method and I simply exhaled, right? So now what I do is I get up in the morning and I go into my front room, which I call my love room, and I sit in a chair and I go, and the goosebumps rise on my arm and I get that feeling that encompasses all over my body, and I just sit in that feeling and I be in that feeling. And my day smooths out. And at the end of the day, I do it again because it feels good to drift off to sleep that way. Right? So I go into that state and I be that love. You know, Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. Well, if you want a loving world, you got to be the love. You know, and that's really, and the other thing is your show probably attracts a lot of highly empathic people, because the more empathic they are, the more they open are to hearing different ideologies. Well, highly empathic people have a couple struggles in life. One of them is that they want to save the world.
Oh, yeah.
Because right.
Yep.
They feel the world's not right and they want to bring love to it and save it and fix it, right? But they can't save the world. All they can do is make their part of the world so loving and bright that the world chooses to save itself around them. Because nobody wants to be told what to do, but they want to make their own choices and have their own experiences. So be the love so they can see the love, so that they can experience the love, so that they can choose to be the love.
Oh, that was amazing.
Well, you know what's really cool? You asked about Jeshua and laughter earlier, right? Jeshua laughed all the time. And so much so that when I painted a picture of him and his wife,
his wife,
right? Yeah, she was just a lovely, wonderful person. She had the yellowish green eyes, and it was just she had. I'll show you the picture again here.
He looks just like this girl that I know.
And laughing, always smiling, always,
Oh, gosh.
There's him and her, right? But if she always had this joy and this laughter. They always had this joy and this laughter, and they always held each other in such high regard. And it's very interesting because it's people ask me all the time, was she an ascended master? Was she all these things? She was a woman. He was a man. He wasn't an ascended master either. He was a man who found his divinity within, and he taught us our divinity. People ask me about that time period, but if I was to try to describe that time period, I would describe it like Afghanistan today. The Taliban have not only the military rule but the religious rule, and they subjugate women, and they do all these things to make them cover and all that stuff. That's more like what the time was like back then. And even if you read the Gnostic Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which is an amazing book to read, I did a whole video on my other channel breaking it down. But right at the end of that gospel, she says, she goes and tells her vision to the disciples. And Peter says, "Why should we listen to you? You're a woman. Why would he talk to you? You're a woman." And Levi says, "Peter, you're being grumpy. Stop that. He loved her more than us, so why wouldn't he share things with her?" Right? But so it kind of showed the society was really anti-woman in that time, very patriarchal. And on the other side of it, it shows that there were people like Levi who were like, no, I'm getting the message, and we are all equal. There's no hierarchy in gender. There's no hierarchy in anything. It's all equality because we're all one. And so, yeah, was she enlightened? I would say that she understood Jeshua's teachings perfectly, and she was being loved simply. And that moment of her just laughing, that feeling of that laughter of the two of them is because they were feeling that oneness with God, and they were feeling that divinity within themselves, and they were being present, moment, and fearless.
I mean, seeing that picture of them both, it feels a little bit sad because this is probably one of the greatest love stories that didn't pan out.
You have no idea. They would laugh until they cried, and she would fall against his chest, and she would just. That's why I painted it that way. You notice she's like nestled right in there, right? Because they're laughing, and it's so. And the funny thing is, the other painting, which I did right after the regression, I had a reader walk by that painting one time at an event that I was doing. I had the painting at the event, and she stopped and she looked at the painting. She says, "Whoever did that saw him on the cross." And I was like, "Really? Why do you say that?" She says, "Because of the eyes. You can see the look in the eyes, the intensity in the eyes." Now, one of the things that I remember most in my regression is his eyes on the cross, looking into his eyes, right? And so that was kind of an interesting experience. But You asked a question earlier that I kind of got away from, and I want to come back to it. So Jeshua on the cross. If you've heard the regression, so you know this affects me. So I'm going to let you know this affects me. There was a moment in that regression where he did something that I don't actually mention in the regression, but this is what happened. Where the cross was basically like a solid stone. The ground was just like a solid stone. And they had chipped holes down into the stone because they were reusing crosses. They would put a cross up and it would drop into this hole.
Yeah.
Right? And they push him up and it drops into the hole. Now, he's got nails through his wrists, right? He's got most people don't know this. He had a rope around his throat like that. And he had nails through the side of his ankles into the sides of the cross. And they lift him up and it drops into that hole. Now imagine how that felt, right? And what he did in that moment was this. He looked at me and he went, like to say, well, that hurt. Right? And it was to make me feel better. And it was to make his mother and his wife feel better because John was there because of them. John was the only disciple who actually made it to the cross because his task was to take care of his family, take care of his mother and his wife. And that's why in the Bible you hear him say, mother, there's your son, son, there's your mother. He literally is telling her to take that. And then if you heard the regression, you know that I had a conversation with Mary at the end, and she says, because you took care of me then, I'm taking care of you now. And so I'm like, yeah, well, that's pretty cool. I kind of like her in my corner. That's not bad.
That regression was painful to listen to, the way you were crying watching Yahshua. And I wondered, why did he have to do it? Because if he is someone who's so good at manifestation, he could have pulled himself out of this entire situation, right?
Sure. Yeah. You look at the Bible, there are many times where the Romans go to get him and he's just magically not there. But the thing is, when you look at Jeshua was speaking truth in a time when the Romans had authority, right? And Jeshua's truth was, you have the power, they don't, right? He was saying things like, before Abraham was, I am. And people think that's a reincarnation reference. It's not. Abraham was the representation of the Jewish faith. Before the relationship of Abraham, before the religion of Abraham, was simply our declaring what we're doing. I am hunting, I am fishing, I am laughing, I am enjoying. And he's talking about coming back to before the doctrines and dogmas and coming back to the feeling of just being in control of what you're doing, being in control of who you are. The story of Adam and Eve, they ate from the tree of knowledge. They got kicked out of paradise. They got in their heads about things and out of their feelings about things. So why did he go to the cross, right? Because people started putting him on a pedestal. Remember I was talking about earlier about the healing, about how they started to believe it was him. Right? So now he's up on a pedestal, and the only way for this message to go forward is to take him out of the picture. And what does he do? He says, you, John, you go to Turkey. You, Peter, you go to Rome. You, James, you stay here in Jerusalem. And he's just sent all his disciples all over the region away from there to teach the message so it would spread. And then he took himself off the field so that the teaching could spread, as opposed to his rock star status. And then what happened was this. Some guy named Paul. Okay, now Paul never met Jesus in life. And when I say Paul, you'll hear me say Jesus instead of Jeshua. because Paul invented Jesus. Because Paul's the one who said, it's your salvation is the death and resurrection of Jesus. Right?
Okay.
He's the one that said that everything is, you're only saved if you believe in Jesus. And he created the division between all religions, right? When you look at the New Testament in the Bible, the majority of the book is written by Luke. The next biggest writer is Paul. Then comes John, right? And then it goes down the line. Luke and Paul, they are 50% of the New Testament. 50% of the New Testament. Luke never met Jesus. Luke was Paul's
Oh,
disciple. Luke was Paul's disciple. Timothy was Paul's
no.
disciple. So the bulk of the Bible. And here's the other thing: if you go in the Gnostic text, James, the brother of Jeshua, literally calls Paul the liar in the Gnostic text, because he claimed himself to be the apostle to the Gentiles, but he never knew Jeshua, so there was no way he could be an apostle of Jeshua. There's stories of James teaching in Jerusalem and someone coming and interrupting and arguing and fighting. And a lot of the scholars believe it was Paul himself who came and was trying to knock down James, right? But you got to remember, even in the Bible, prior to his conversion, after his vision on the road to Damascus, his whole thing was to be a Pharisee and to persecute Christians. He was literally going around persecuting Christians. And then when you look at the New Testament, especially the 50% that they wrote, it matches Pharisee teachings right to the letter. And it also says, which is I find really interesting, all Christians should be celibate. Right? Well, wouldn't that end Christianity, really, if you think about it, right? But the reason he said all Christians should be celibate is because Paul believed the end times were happening, and that the end of the world was happening in his lifetime, and to bring a child into the world that's ending is terrible, right? So he was literally saying everyone needs to be celibate because the end times are here and now. And so it's really fascinating when you dive into the studies of it, because Jeshua's teachings was love one another. Jeshua's teachings were the idea that you are divine. Jeshua's teachings are that you're one with God, and that your thoughts are creating your experience. Your belief, and your thoughts are your beliefs. What you think is your belief, and the other word for belief is faith. It is your faith that heals you. It's what you believe. So to me, Jeshua did an amazing sacrifice of himself so that the teachings could go forward, and he took himself off the playing field because of that. Make sense?
But it still doesn't make sense. He could have still not gotten crucified, right? He could have still left the stage in a normal way.
Yeah. So let's dive into your Indian heritage a little bit.
Okay.
In India, there's a thing called Sri Isa, a guy called Sri Isa. You ever heard of him?
No.
Okay, so Sri Isa, they know where he was in India. He was there from the time that Jeshua was a little boy until the time he was around 30. And when you ask him what happened to him, they say he went back to his country and was crucified. So Sri Isa was literally teaching in India or learning or studying in India from the time he was a child, where he disappears from the Bible, and to the time he came back to the Bible, which he comes back. Now, what's really interesting, and once again, I don't have any knowledge of this. This is just from studies. I don't have any past life memory of this.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a very large segment of Hindu society that believes after the crucifixion, Sri Isa came back with his wife and raised children and died in India. So the question then becomes did he resurrect? Right? And it's really, I have to be honest and be truthful. Like I told you at the beginning of this, I am an open book. My first memory of Jeshua was not in my regression. It was in my second reading with Sharon Prince. And I had a full memory of my face in the sand, looking up at Jeshua, laughing at me. Like, what are you doing? Get up, right? And then years later, I found out that was after the resurrection. I saw him again, and I dropped on my face, because this is the man that I love and respect, who I saw die on a cross. And I literally have memories of looking up at him, laughing at me, because I fell on my face in front of him, right? So that's and that is the last memory I have of him, of his life, that moment. But if you study in India, you'll find out that there are story after story after story of gurus who come to a river that they can't cross, and they sit down and they project their consciousness to the other side of the river, and they
Yeah.
manifest their body, and they keep walking. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
My friend, who is now passed, my friend Johnny Fox, he was a practicing Hindu, and he would go to India every year to study with his guru. And one year he took a friend of his with him, and just because he was hoping the friend would find some spirituality or something, and he was trying to force spirituality on him.
Yeah.
Right, which never works, by the way. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So,
I also tried it. Doesn't work.
yeah. So the guy's over there, and he's depressed. He's not enjoying it. He doesn't want to be there. And the guru walks over to him and says, "What's the matter?" He says, "Well, if I had my guitar, at least I could play some music, but I don't even have that." And the guru says, "Where's your guitar?" And the guy says, "It's in San Francisco." He says, "Where in San Francisco?" And the guy gives him his address. And my friend Johnny swears to God, an hour later, he handed him his guitar. Right? So if this is an illusion of our belief,
Yeah.
and if we are only our consciousness, there is no reason that you can't go anywhere in this consciousness and create. Right? Pretty good definition of resurrection. Pretty good definition of resurrection.
Yeah,
So-
it is. It is. So it because because you see when there are these there are people who remember their trauma that they go through when they're children. Let's say they're
Yeah.
abused as a child. They talk about how their body is going through all of that, and then they leave the body and they watch it from the top. Do you think it's something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah. I've been lucky. I had the experience in my regression of watching John cross to that place.
Okay.
I had a spontaneous Kundalini rising in 1992.
That's when I was
where
born.
Well, you young
I
and
awakened you. When I landed, you got your awakening. I was the missing grid.
And you know what, my friend? It is 11:11 here right now.
Oh, whoa.
I think the word Kundalini is just a dogma as well. I think it just was that awareness of going out to a greater awareness of self, right? And then after that experience, I had my first out-of-body experience like the next day. And then I got really good at getting out of my body. And for a long time, I would get out of my body. And people are like, "What's the method? How do you do it?" It's so simple. It's ridiculous. But one time while going out of body, I decided to try astral travel. Like to literally consciously go somewhere else. And I went to I'm going to tell you a funny story. This is a very funny story. So I was like, I got out of body. I was like, I'm going to Bo's house. Now, my friend Bo lived in Delaware, and I was in that time in Maryland. So he was 3 hours drive away. Right. I literally declared I was going to Bo's house, and I had the experience of raising up out of where I was, and then I have this visceral experience of flying over the Chesapeake Bay without a plane at nighttime, feeling the wind and everything. And I literally had that experience, and then I ended up in Bo's house, and I'm like, this is bizarre. I'm in Bo's house. I'm like, I need to find something that if I can tell him it's there, I can verify what I'm doing, right? And I turn and I look, and Bo is lying asleep on his couch, right? So I'm thinking, well, that's good. But then I was like, if I'm out of my body, can I actually project a message to him? So then I started thinking, okay, how do I project a message to him? And I said, and whatever message I send to him, it has to be weird, because if he says the weirdest thing I can say to me, then I'll get a verification. So I go over and I'm like, Bo, this is what I'm thinking. Purple rhinoceros, purple rhinoceros, purple rhinoceros, purple rhinoceros. And I just keep saying purple rhinoceros, purple rhinoceros. The next day I called Bo just to see what would happen. I said, Bo, how you doing? He says, John, I had a really rough night. I go, why? What happened? He says, I kept dreaming about you. I said, that's kind of crazy. What was it? Yeah, but the weirdest thing, John, is you just kept saying purple rhinoceros.
Wow.
So how's that for a validation, right? So the next night I decided I want to go do that again. And I go in and I get out of body and I bypass the physical experience and I cross over. And I'm standing in front of me is a man and two women. And the man looks at me with that same face that Jeshua gave me when I first met him. Like,
you messed up.
yeah. And he says, "You're not supposed to be here yet." And these two women walk around him and tickle my body back into itself. They physically tickled the body to get me. And I started laughing, right?
Okay.
Popped me back into my body. So do I believe that if I kept this practice up, that I could move my body? I think that's what remote viewing is. I think that we're just consciously saying something else. But people say, "John, do you still do all that stuff? Do you still do astral travel? Do you still do out of body?" I go, "No." They go, "Why? Why wouldn't you do that?" I said, "Because here is much more fun. Being here and loving and watching lives change around you is much more fun. You know, understanding that I can get out and do those things, but understanding also that I can be a bodhisattva and be here delivering that message in the now and delivering the power to everyone else that they're divine. Much better, much more fun."
Yeah, I noticed that there were a lot of out-of-body travelers who I wanted to bring on to the podcast, and I watched their videos, which was old, maybe 10, 7, 8 years old. And then when I asked them, "Do you want to talk about it?" They don't want to.
Yeah.
So they're done with that. It's not something that people like doing it. But what if you never come back? What if you leave the body and then, whatever, that like, what if you get stuck there?
I'm smiling because I don't succumb to fear.
You don't succumb to fear.
And everything
Okay.
you just said was a fear-based ideology.
Yes, it is, because I
You're
wanted
gonna
to
get
try.
stuck out.
Like,
if I lose the silver cord.
The silver cord, that's right. Because
Yeah.
I try to play the music, which is the hemi-sync music, which is from that the institute that teaches about it. But I was worried that maybe I might not come back. So you will come back.
It's not possible because you never leave. You're one with God. You're not leaving your physical body. You're shutting down the illusion for a second or two. So
Oh.
yeah, it's you are your greater. In Christianity they talk about the Trinity. Now the Trinity is not biblical. It's from the 4th century, but I like it, and I'll tell you why I like it. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, God consciousness, the physical world consciousness that's not aware of its divinity, and the higher self consciousness or the Holy Spirit consciousness that is aware of its divinity and yet still aware of its individuality. And so I think it's all one, but I think it's just levels of awareness of our oneness. And when I look at it from that perspective, I'm like, well, if it's all one, then my intuition's coming from my Holy Spirit, which is my higher self. Christians will divide that and say the Holy Spirit is separate from you and God is separate from you. But everything else is, everybody else says it's all about oneness, being in the here and now. So I look at it from the perspective of going out of body. The silver cord, that's a new age ideology. I've never seen a silver cord one, right? But when we go out of body, we're still processing through our belief. If you study near-death experiences, there's a famous near-death experience of a young girl who was in a Christian family living in India, and some marauders came and killed them because they were Christians and left the little girl for dead. And what happened? She had a near-death experience, and Jeshua came and saved her. She was found by a Hindu family who took her into their house. They nursed her back to health, and they raised her as their child. But as time went on, she didn't look like you anymore. She looked like somebody who was an Indian, right? And the marauders came back to kill her again because they figured out that she was the young Christian girl who survived. And they tried to kill her again, and she had a second near-death experience. Only this time, Shiva saved her. Because her present moment belief when she was a Christian was that she was the ideologies and the imagery of Jesus. When she was a Hindu was the ideologies of Shiva and the Bhagavad Gita. I think when we cross over, we're transitioning through and out of our belief back into the greater awareness of everything.
You, in the regression, you left the body as John of old. So do you remember the transition from John of old to like, you remember that? What is that like?
Well, the first thing that happens is, as it's happening, you start to see the world as having no depth. You start to see the granular universe, the dots, the atoms, and then it fades to white. And then you're suddenly in this pure white space of pure love, and you're just experiencing it. And I think when people talk about crossing over and going through the dark tunnel and coming to the light, I think the dark tunnel itself is their belief in separation. And because John of old didn't have the experience of having to go through his fears to experience that, because Jeshua was there being the pure love. And so he literally was going directly into that pure love and going right into that white space. Now, I will tell you something else. After that regression, when I look at the wall over here in front of me, I see all the dots. Like that's a gray wall, but I can see all of the different colors in motion making up that wall. And they're little tiny, trillions and trillions and trillions of dots. And when I try to focus on the distance where that wall is, I realize there is no distance. It just appears to be a distance. The air is also those dots. And like I was saying earlier, that oneness of God, that's how my vision changed after that regression. That's how I see the world. The idea of that, what's it like to cross over? It literally is a releasing of this illusion and coming into the white space in between, the negative space that the atoms they talk about, right? You're literally the illusion, that energy, event, and motion is the illusion, but the rest of it, they can't measure. They say it's empty space. It's actually the stuff without the thoughts.
You know, but you said that for you, because you already had the essence of Yahshua, you didn't have to see the black tunnel, etc. You know, when Yahshua was at the cross, when he was getting crucified, there were two prisoners on either side of him. And then he told them that they are going to come with him to heaven. What does that mean? Everyone's going to heaven, right?
Well, what does heaven mean? Because that's the question. Because the reality of it is that question, and even the question itself, is based in Christian ideology or Christian imagery. The concept of heaven or hell. There is no hell, according to Jeshua. According to the Jewish faith, there's only Sheol, and Sheol is the hole in the ground where the dead go. It's this esoteric 9 levels of hell and all that stuff came from Dante's Inferno in the 1300s. Had nothing to do with what happened 2,000 years ago. But heaven's kind of the same thing. But if you think of heaven more along the lines of nirvana or the paradise, when John of old crossed over, and when I crossed over and that guy told me I couldn't stay, right? You go into that space and you feel that purity of love. And I'm using the word purity on purpose. Most people would say unconditional, but even saying unconditional gives the idea that there can be a condition. It's pure. It's pure love. There's nothing else, only love. And when you're crossing over, what happens is you feel that more and more and more, and it grows and grows, and it becomes, and you when you get there, you feel like a child, because it's an expanse of everything. You're like literally experiencing the infinite, but you realize what you haven't known, but now you're knowing it, and you're like, and that's why when that guy looked at me and said, "You're not supposed to be here yet," and he gave me like that look he gave me, it was like looking at a child who just stole a cookie, right? you know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's so cute, but you're not supposed to be here yet, And I felt the awe and wonder of it. I was just like, experiencing that moment, and even once again, see the hairs and the goosebumps rising up on my arms. Just even thinking about it makes it all pop up, and that experience plays again. And the more the more you acknowledge that in that laughter is that feeling. but you have to acknowledge the feeling to experience it more. I go, and I feel it, because I know that at the bottom of me, of that breath, when I release it, I am coming to the fearless state. And when you're fearless, what's left is God and your oneness with it.
Do you think, did you ever see Yeshua getting, foreseeing what's going to happen and being fearful at all about the crucifixion?
I don't have memories of that, but I will tell you, he was a man.
Yeah.
And he had his pissed off moments. right.
Yeah.
He overturned the tax collector's cards. He did all these,
he did that. I thought that was just an exaggeration. No, he actually did all of that.
No. He said, "What are you doing? None of this matters. Give to Caesar what's Caesar's." Right? He had moments of mad because, do you think when he said, "You have eyes, but you do not see. You have ears, but you do not hear," you think he was happy?
I thought it was, "You have eyes, but you do not see. You have ears." I thought it was like that calm thing. No.
He's saying, "Listen to what I'm saying. You're not getting it. You're not getting it." Right?
Okay.
You have eyes, but you do not see. You have ears, you do not hear. There's a famous story, and it makes me laugh, where he's walking down the path. He sees a fig tree. And he goes over to the fig tree, and there's no figs on the tree because they'd already been harvested.
Yeah.
What does the Bible say he did? He cursed the fig tree.
Oh, he cursed the fig tree, not created another one?
No, he cursed the fig tree. He's like, "Damn you, tree, for not having fruit, because I love figs." All right.
No way.
He was a human, and that's the biggest issue that most Christians have, is they don't understand the beauty of his message. That he did find a divinity within, but to be here in the physical, you can't be perfect, because you have to experience fears and anxieties and some stresses, and people want to make him out to be this mystical wizard, but he was a man who literally discovered his own divinity, and was telling us that we have the same. But he still had his moments. He still had his moments. We all do.
We all do.
Yeah, in the Bible, he never says he's the Son of God.
He doesn't say John, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I have certain questions that's going through my head, and I'm not asking it, but you're answering every question.
Oh, well, there you
go. You are reading my question, because literally there was a time during this podcast interview where you said, and you asked this question. I asked it in my head. I didn't ask it through the mic. Yes. I did not ask it outside, John.
Well,
you've been answering all of my questions, which is good.
That's because we're one. That's because we're one. Last year I did over 1,000 private sessions, and for every private session I did, I sit down an hour before, and I write the person's name on a sheet of paper, and I exhale, and I just start writing whatever comes into my head. Now, people say, "Well, who are you channeling, John?" And I say, all I'm doing is I'm setting myself aside with my focus on the other aspect of my oneness in the divinity of God. And so what I think is coming through is coming from the person's higher self.
Yeah.
And so
I understand.
That's what I believe. And so having done 1,000 of them, I'm probably slipping into it a little bit.
You are. Yep. This is the fourth question that you asked without me asking it.
Well, the Son of God thing, though, he always says he's the Son of Man.
Yeah.
Right? Well, what is the Son of Man?
But he said he was the Son of. But he said he was Son of Man at the beginning, and then in the end he said Son of God. So maybe he also did not know he was the Son of God.
Did he?
Did he not?
Nope.
Did he not?
Nope. The only thing that they say he said that was when he spoke to the Samaritan woman at the well. She said, "Are you the one that they spoke of?" And supposedly he said, "I am." Well, that's the name of God.
Yes.
Right? It's also him, right? Now, let's put this in context, though. Bible, the New Testament was written 70 to 200 years after the crucifixion by Greco-Roman Christians who never knew Jeshua. And all of the books that are attributed to the disciples were probably not written by the disciples at all. And in fact, if you read the Bible, there's actually a passage in the Bible that says Peter and John were illiterate.
Oh,
So
no.
how could they write the
Okay.
book, right? Right.
Yeah.
But when you read the Bible, you're going to find all this messianic stuff and all these ideas from a Greco-Roman perspective. Here's the interesting thing: is that the New Testament was not written in Hebrew or Aramaic; it was written in Greek. The earliest texts were written in Greek, and people say, and there's even a New Age guy now who's like, yeah, but the Aramaic Bible, the original Aramaic Bible, there is no original Aramaic Bible. What he's referring to is something called the Peshitta. And the Peshitta was translated from Greek into Aramaic. So it's like, you have to understand that everything in the Bible is hearsay. Somebody is saying somebody else said something else.
So now, the Muslims say that, everything in the Bible is altered and the Quran is the final version, the perfect version. What do you think about that?
I don't believe it at all. I think that the second you say it's perfect, you've released divinity. You've released it. When it's like Judaism, they those Christians and those Muslims and do you know the Baha'i faith at all?
No, I don't. I heard of it.
Okay, so check this out. You have Judaism, and then you have Christianity. So now Christians believe that they are the fulfillment of Judaism, right? Now Muslims believe that Jeshua was the prophet before Muhammad. And
yes.
Muslims believe that Jews and Christians and Muslims are all going to the same heaven.
Yes.
Because they're praying to the same God. Years later, Baha'u'llah creates the Baha'i faith. He believes he's the prophet after Muhammad. Right? So, but what's fascinating to me when I look at this, the Abrahamic line is what I call it, right? The most fearful religion in the world is Judaism. The damnation, the fires from heaven, and all that stuff, right? But then you have this simple message of love one another that gets skewed up by someone who's pushing Judaism into it, right? Then you get to Islam, and Islam, people give Islam a really bad name, but Muhammad said, "He who knows not kindness has no faith." Right? To be a Muslim is to be not only subjugated to God, being love, but also to be kind and considerate. When I traveled through the Middle East, I was treated beautifully because I treated people beautifully, right? So I have no issues with any of those faiths as long as they're not trying to subjugate or harm, right? And the people who are subjugating and harm aren't following their faith, right? But then you get to Baha'i, and the Baha'i faith says that we're all praying to the same God, that Buddha was a prophet and Krishna was a prophet, and it starts saying that we are all one with everything, and the faith is beautiful. It has its own dogmas, its own methods and stuff. But if you look at the whole thing, it goes from the most fearful to the most loving all the way through. It's like it's a transition into love through religion. But the people who are getting stuck in the religions saying we are the only way, or he's the final prophet, or it's because they're not transitioning to the loving part of this thing. And what's so interesting is that when, as I said earlier, talking about the train tracks, they're on their train track looking out their window at what their truth will tell them, as opposed to looking at all the beauty and the love in all of it. Bible literally says, in my Father's house there are many mansions. And so I tell people all the time, if what your belief creates you to be a loving person, loving one another, then I think you found your path to God. I don't care what faith you are, as long as you're loving. The second you're not loving, then I question your faith.
You have read so much about all of these religions. You probably don't even have to read about all this because I think you're channeling, right?
Well, yeah. This is going to sound really kind of self-serving, but I actually have a photographic memory.
In the regression, I didn't understand exactly what you meant, but you said you are the representation of the feminine. What is that?
Yeah. So here's, because I had to interpret this myself. I believe the masculine is not, it has nothing to do with gender at all. It has to do with the thinking mind and the feeling body. we get in our heads, that's the masculine. We get into our feelings, that's the feminine. And what's happening now is people are starting to process from, this doesn't feel good, I'm going to create a more loving world. And they start, and we're transitioning into it. I am an highly empathic feeling person. You know, I feel things. When I was a kid, I used to have the out of body experiences as a kid too. I didn't know what they were. Right.
Oh,
I used to have, my dad didn't like it because, he was a blue collar plumber and I was this weird kid who was talking to people who weren't there and all kinds of stuff like that. So I've been having that feeling experience my whole life and feeling the judgment of others my whole life. And so as a child, I did not thrive because I was so afraid of failing or not being loved. And it wasn't until much later in life when and actually acting Renaissance festivals. I did a lot of Renaissance festivals. That helped me know that I was okay. That I was, and then by the time I had my regressions and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to be me no matter what. And now, I'm a guy who remembers this past life as an apostle, and I'm walking around very publicly saying I was the reincarnation of this guy. Right?
Yeah.
How weird is that? It's strange. It's crazy. But on top of that, I have noticed, I've had multiple people tell me that they're John as well. I've had multiple people who tell me they're Paul and Peter, and I've met a couple of people who think they're Jesus. I've met over 30 women who told me they're Mary Magdalene. Right? I would be a complete hypocrite to say that they're wrong because I'm saying the same thing. So I'm not sure we truly understand reincarnation. We all might just be tapping into the oneness of God and feeling those experiences of those individual sparks. Hinduism talks about the consciousness of God being the Sit, and we are the Sit Sat Ki, the individual sparks of consciousness within the one God. So are we tapping into the individual sparks of the one God and just bringing those information down from that? Or are we truly the soul that did that? I don't think it matters who anyone was in a past life. I only think it matters who you are in the present moment. And, that's why I'm very clear to say I'm John Davis. I'm not John the Beloved. Right?
You are John the Beloved.
Well, I can't help it. This is one of the things. Somebody would say something like that to me before. I used to do this. I used to go.
Man.
But look what you just did. You laughed. And if I can spread laughter, that is the presence of God right there. Right.
Yeah.
You watch my videos. I laugh in a lot of them. Right. Because I feel that I'm expressing that feeling. And we've laughed a lot in this conversation and it's been lovely. Right. And in that feeling is, if you can acknowledge that's a feeling of your direct connection to God right there, then you don't need a dogma, a doctrine, a method, a modality, a technique. It's because it's right here, right now, and being in the here and now. That's what Jeshua taught. Think not upon tomorrow, be here today. It's right in the Bible. right in the Bible. With Jesus.
Yes.
Right.
When you were saying that, I was thinking about your interview with Alex Ferrari. I feel like you and Alex, have you met him in person?
Oh, I've been interviewed by him twice. I was on his streaming network once. I spoke to his membership group, but I will meet him in person August 30th when I go to Austin. Yeah. I'm going to his studio. And then I'm also doing his big event, his Soul Mastery Summit.
Wow.
You know what that is? He's got 4 weekends of like Bashar and Kyle Cease and Anita Majani, and each weekend has different speakers, and I'm one of the speakers on one of the weekends.
Wow.
Yeah, and
so it's an in-person thing.
No, it's online.
It's online. Okay.
And if you go to my channel, there's a video that has a picture of all the speakers on the thumbnail, and if you use my link on that video, what happens is it's an affiliate link, and I get a little bit of kickback. So.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Guys, just go and get there and we'll also get a discount, right? I mean, if
Oh,
we
yeah.
used to,
There's an early bird discount right now
yeah,
at the book.
that's right. So it helps both. So I'm going to check it out as well. It's on your website, is it?
Yeah. Well, if you go, well, it will be by this afternoon.
No worries. I'll put it in the description. No problem about that.
Right.
Because I think you and Alex Ferrari, because Alex is also someone who keeps laughing all the time, and you
Yeah.
both laugh similarly. So I think it would be amazing
And whenever we talk, like in interviews, it's always about laughter. We're always laughing. It's like
Yes.
I feel like I'm talking to my brother.
Yes,
You know what I
yes,
mean?
you do
It
look
feels
like
that way.
brothers.
Yeah.
You
And
sound
then
like brothers. It's a very good conversation between you both.
I also interviewed Neil Donald Walsh. You know who that is?
Yes, I know. I don't listen to. I know this person. I've heard the name.
Okay.
I heard the
He
name.
wrote a book called Conversations with God, a whole series of books.
Oh yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
See, you're
Yeah,
tapping into
so-
me again. That was
Yeah.
the next book on my reading thing, my wish list, The Conversations with God. I started reading that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But I thought
Neil,
he's not alive. Sorry.
no, he's
still there?
alive, and he's just written his next book. And
Oh, okay.
when we finish the interview, I'll tell you how to get a hold of him.
Oh, Ray, thank you so much. That's going to be awesome.
I'll tell you how to get him on your channel for an interview.
Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you so much, John.
You're
John, the
welcome.
beloved.
You're welcome. I'm John the schmuck, is what I am.
John, coming back to the masculine and the feminine, because I think we have to touch upon it. Because right now we see that there is this major visible divide. Have you seen it too on social media? Men are talking bad about the women, and the women are talking bad about the men. The women are like, they go to dates just to talk shit about the men. They were like, we had a very bad date today. He said that, and they're mocking the men, and the men are also talking women about how they're gold diggers, etc., etc., etc. So when I heard you saying that the masculine and the feminine has to come together, and when they come together, the global unification happens, and the wars and the diseases would end. That was like, oh my gosh.
Well, let me share something. You know, the momentum of our universe is like a giant cargo ship at sea, right? When you're on a cargo ship at sea and you turn the wheel, it takes miles for the bow to come around and start to turn.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We turned the wheel on a loving world a long time ago. And what's interesting is you can tell this because the children coming up right now, they're not racist, they're not homophobic, they're not gender biased. They accept all people. My son's 22 years old, and all of his classmates have no issues. Our world is dramatically changing. It's people like me, who was born in 1964. People like me remember the Wild West. And I say that in a funny way, Wild West. When I was a kid, I grew up in a beach resort, which is known to be the nation's gay summer capital, right? All the alternate lifestyle people from Washington, D.C. have houses in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And when I was a kid, there were bar fights and it was a violent stuff going on around town. And at the gay bars, every so often, the rednecks would show up and beat up the gay guys in the parking lot, right? You go back to that town now, there's none of that. There's none of that. A bar fight is unheard of, right? And there's none of that. The town has changed so dramatically. The thing is that those of us who remember the past have to realize that the past is our subconscious mind. So we look for the negative because it's what our subconscious mind says is a threat. And the kids don't have those past experiences because we have been very good about showing our children a loving world, right? And what happens now, the other thing you have to remember is that the negative gets the better press, right? Right. So if I worked in Cleveland, which is 30 minutes north of my house, right? I live in Akron, Ohio. If I worked in Cleveland, I had a 9-to-5 job Monday through Friday, I would probably pass 1,000 cars on the way to work, way to and from work, right? Every day I might see an accident on the side of the road, and the news is going to be inundated. Be careful around exit 4. There's an accident on the side of the road. Did you see that accident on the side of the road, John? It was terrible. Horrible. They forgot to mention that 999 cars made it to their destination safely without any problem whatsoever. The world is predominantly positive already, and it's a matter of us those of us who remember the past remember how hard things can be to start releasing those things. People say, I have a little struggle with people because I do think of everyone as equal. And people who don't think of people as equal misinterpret who I am. I get women who become attracted and want to date me because I don't treat them like they're different, right? I get men who want to struggle with me because I treat women that way, right? Or I'm I'm too feminine for them, right? And it's not my problem, it's theirs, right? And the key is the best way to think of your life is think of it this way: are you an action hero or are you a reaction zero to the stimulus of the world, fearfully out of the fight or flight response, or are you going to exhale when things happen and go, okay, not doing that? And this is what Jeshua meant when he said, turn the other cheek. Don't react to the stimulus of the world. Let it go by.
You spoke about how a lot of women get attracted to you because it is kind of rare for people to, the men to show their feelings and be just normal, right? They do react so much, and you can't even have a normal conversation before they start reacting or calling you names, etc. How do you think they can change? Are they changeable?
Well, they're already changing.
Is it?
And here's something else. They're aging out.
What's that? That means they're getting older and out of the market.
Yep. Yep,
Sure.
They're aging out, right? And not only that, as they're aging, they jokingly call Florida God's waiting room in America. Because all the retirees go down there and die, right? So it's God's waiting room, right? A lot of these people who've got the hateful, harmful, hurtful things in their mind are literally leaving the physical plane. They're getting older and they're passing on, right? Over the past 20 years, 54% of religions have lost religions have lost 54% of their congregations, Catholic churches and Christian churches especially, because there is a shift in humanity towards a more loving and inclusive environment. And the churches themselves don't promote that. They promote, Muhammad's the only one. Jesus is the only one. We're waiting for the Messiah who will be the only one, right? And so it's all about this division and hate towards anybody else's beliefs. But they've lost 54% of their congregations, right? Now, statistically, 30% of the world are Christian. Less than half of 20% of those are Catholics. So it comes down to that. Of the original 30%, less than half of them even practice it. They just declare it, right? They're Christmas, Easter Catholics, or whatever.
That's right.
That's right. And so that brings us down to 15% of the world population. But they are the 15% that judge everybody else for not believing as they do. So they really don't have that much power unless they put themselves into those positions of power. And so to me, if they're loving and they're in that, my mom was a loving, caring, beautiful person, right? And it was after her death, we found out all the good things she had done for people. They started coming out of the woodworks telling us, none of us knew it. She was keeping it in secret, doing charitable things, doing loving things. And it really comes down to understanding that the second you say mine is the only way, you're negating most of the world. And that's just crazy, really, because we're in this world thing together. We're in this life thing together. So.
Yeah. When you said that, it's a little bit sad when you said they are aging out, because I actually see that. I do see the men who are mean, etc., being, left off, and then everyone else is moving on to this new world. Because unlike before, where just because you're older, there would be children listening to you, or younger ones coming to you for advice, but that doesn't work anymore because there are these 20-year-olds, these teens. They're saying big things, like really intelligent, wise things that you will feel stupid when they open their mouth and talk. So it's it is what you said is very true.
My son
Yeah.
is 22 now, but when he was 6 years old, he said the wisest thing I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
He
What did he
said,
say?
"Daddy, God told me he's in everything and everyone, and we control the God part inside of us."
Wow.
Yeah. We control the God part inside of us.
Wow, right?
Yeah, we are a
Wow.
representation of the divine, and we control it through our beliefs, through our thoughts.
It's beautiful.
Amazing story. Amazing, right?
Yeah. It's
And
beautiful.
it's so simple. God's in everything and everyone, and we control the God part inside of us, the divinity within us. Loves when he said that, I couldn't believe it. I was like, it's like this kid's like Yoda.
It's true. It's true because, when I try to get people on the podcast, I get the older people on the podcast because they speak well, etc. But for them to speak well, they had to go through 20 years of that being in the cocoon and trying to understand what happened to make sense of the spiritual awakening, etc. The 20-year-olds, I'm 33, and then the 20-year-olds, I would speak to them, and they're already speaking so eloquently about the things that's happening. Right? They don't have to try to make sense of anything. They just know it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's because we turned the wheel in our cargo ship a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they are the proof that it is happening now. But it takes more of us people like myself who are 60, 61 years old to say, look at this, recognize this. Now, I'll tell you something interesting. We were talking about aging out. When I look at the statistics of my YouTube channel, my average viewer is in their 60s, and they're female. My average viewer. So I have a very big older following. But when I look at the stats, there are 18 to 20s who are watching me. They're all there, but the majority of my people are older. And what I find in the work that I'm doing, especially with my private sessions, is I am pointing out that they're divine, and I'm showing them that they can release the dogmas and the fears of religions. And what I find, I'm so blessed in my life because I get messages every day telling me how much their lives have changed because of the work that I do. But every day I also get the one that calls me an antichrist and a Satan and I'm like, but for every one of those, I get 100 of the other kind. Right. So
yeah.
I just look at that person as, oh, that's their fear, not mine. I don't succumb to their fears.
In the regression, you said that you were the only interdimensional doorway to ground that essence.
I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what that means. I'll be honest with you. But when I look at this, first of all, it sounds like a huge ego statement.
Yeah, but you were doubtful in it, so I didn't find it egoistic. You were like, he said something like this. Yeah.
But the final lines of the book of John, Peter points at John and says, "What of him?" And he points at John. And Jeshua says, "If I want him to stay until I come, what's that to you? I'm talking to you." And then in the Bible, it says the disciples thought that John would not die. And then it clarifies it in the book. It says, but that's not what he said. He said, I want him to stay until I come, right? So if I was to look at those words now from a scientific perspective, right. I would say there's a vibration that might be left behind. Am I the one? Maybe I'm not, but maybe that Sitsat-Ki named John that's in the oneness of God that many people can tap into. Maybe that's the oneness. But if you think about it, in the concept of everything being illusion, and each one of us is creating our own illusion. If you want to come back to a specific illusion, you got to leave a beacon behind or a tracer behind to come back to the specific illusion to make the change in that specific illusion. Now, once again, I'm not saying that's the truth, right? But this has been my thinking of trying to figure out what all that crap meant. Right. There's a lot that was said in my regression, like the thing about Peter and being an Asian man, and there's all kinds of things in there that
Saul, yeah, someone who came, you said that there was a masculine that had come through I think the masculine had already come through, you said. Now it is the time for the feminine to come, which is you. And then they both have to unite together. And then the wars and everything would end. It's a
boy, I gotta go
lot
back
to
and listen.
unpack.
I've got to go back and listen to my regression because I don't remember most of this.
Yeah. Listen to it, because I listened to it. The first time I listened to it, there was some information that came through. The second time, there was more that came through. So it's like, it's something where you keep listening, more and more information comes through from that regression. Kind of like Robert Edward Grant says, when you go to the pyramids, when you first see it, you might not see the whole thing. But then if your consciousness elevates and you see through more, so there must be, if you listen back, maybe now you would understand more of it.
I probably would, because that regression was in 1999.
Oh.
The one you listened to was in 1999. And so, now, 26 years later, I'll bet there's more insight and more wisdom that I could probably glean from it. So I should listen to it again. Although I have a hard time listening to it myself.
Yeah, I understand.
What I should do is I should fast forward past the crucifixion and just get onto the stuff, because all that I think came after that.
Yeah.
Because
it came after that.
One of the things I find interesting about that regression is during the regressive part, remembering the life and all that stuff, and then there was this marked shift where suddenly I was not in the past life, where I was literally speaking in the now, in the present with Mary, Mother Mary, and I was literally no longer remembering historical events. I was having a real-time conversation and real-time information coming through. And to me, that's really fascinating, because I wasn't having a historical memory. I was literally just dropping information. This is a question that I've asked myself many times. The concept of using the word masculine and feminine, when that regression was happening, that was the buzzword in spirituality, masculine and feminine. And so am I using that term specifically because of the fact that that's what my consciousness knew at the time, like that young lady who saw Jeshua in her first near death and Shiva in her second, right? Was my regression affected by my own conscious memories of the time that I was in? So I don't know. All I really know is that when I make it as simple as possible, and I look at everyone as one, and I come from the space of love and intention of love, my life got really good. Right?
Simple, yeah.
Yeah, and it really is that simple. And so, and I'm not. I know it may not seem it. I'm not a big thinker. Right? The more simple I make it, I'm like, wow, I can just be loving, and that's it. That's great, and then I can go on and have a vacation, right?
Yes.
No, the Bible never said you had to go to church on Sunday.
No, they said you have to hold. Though the Old Testament talks about holding the Shabbat.
The
Maybe
Sabbath.
That's why. Yeah. Maybe
now,
the
so
Sabbath.
ask yourself a question. The Sabbath was on Saturday. Why is the church on Sunday?
Right.
So it's like, yeah. There's so many contradictions in that Bible. People say to me, it's the infallible word of God. I say, really? How did Judas die? And they go, well,
how did Judas die?
Okay, so in the Bible, there's two different versions of how he died.
Yes. Okay, tell me.
One of them was he threw the 30 pieces of silver down and he went and he hung himself.
Yes.
That's the one that everybody leans into. There's another version where he took the 30 pieces of silver, he bought the farm called Potter's Field, and months later, while plowing his field, he fell, hit his head, and he bled out on the field and died.
Oh, I remember these two versions.
Yeah. Now, if the Bible's infallible, they can't both be true.
Right. Yes.
So, right? Walking on water story, three different versions. And it's interesting. The first one is the Matthew story. It's the one where Peter steps out, takes a couple of steps, he falls, the ye of little faith. Then there's the John version, which I don't like either. In the John's version, they see Jeshua walking across the water, and they invite him into the boat, and the whole boat gets transported to shore. All right. My favorite version is the Luke version. They're all in the boat. The storm is going around them. They're going crazy. They're afraid they're going to die, and Jeshua casually strolls by the boat.
Okay.
Why I like this is because each one of us is living a life like we're inside of our own hurricane. The world's swirling around us. We have a hard time seeing past the storm. But Jeshua showed you the storm is in your mind. If you let go of the storm, nothing can harm you, right? In Hinduism, there's a guru whose name was Swami Narayan, and he was a 13-year-old boy who reached enlightenment. And he you remember the movie Jungle Book?
Yes.
All the depictions of Swami Narayan, he looked like Mowgli. He had the loincloth and nothing else, and it was okay. 13 years old, he did a 13,000 kilometer walk around India to every holy site in India. And at one point, he walks into a village that was having a problem with an Asiatic lion that was attacking villagers at dusk, when it was visible. So he's walking on his 13,000 kilometer trek. He wanders into this village, and the villagers are all like, "Young boy, come into our home, come into our house, come in." And he's like, "No, it's okay." And they come out in the morning, and Swami Narayan is sitting next to a tree, and the lion is asleep about 6 feet away from him. And they asked him, "Why didn't the lion eat you?" He says, "Because I'm without fear, he gave me nothing to be fearful for." And
I've heard of this story.
now let me flip this story. I had a woman that I was working with who had severe agoraphobia. She could never leave her house. She was afraid to leave her house. And so, being the ornery person that I am, I used to go pick her up and take her out to lunch. Right? I'd get her out of her house, right? Well, one day while driving to the restaurant, I hear from the passenger seat, "John, why do the cars on the highway merge easily with you?" Because her experience in a car was terrifying, struggles, people not merging well, they're not cooperating. And I turned to her and I said, "Sandy, the reason is because I love driving, and driving gives me love in return." And that's true. I love to drive. I never have issues driving. I have a great old time. And when I feel myself getting stressed out, I notice that my gas pedal goes down further when I get stressed out. Right? The more calm I am, the easier I drive, the more I easily let people merge with me. It's just the way the world works. Is you are the expression of your belief. Beliefs are chosen, and you can choose to live a loving life, or you can choose to live a fearful one, and your result will be exactly what you choose.
When I talk about you to my family here, and I tell them that Yahshua was with Mary Magdalene and he was married, they get shocked. They look at it with disgust. That is not even possible. Why do you think they have such massive reactions to this?
Because of St. Paul. St. Paul said he was divine, which means he had to be celibate, and that the concept of marriage and even the concept of him having sex would have been disgusting, because Paul said you have to be celibate. And so for him to be a spirit, it's all Pauline dogma. And that's what that's what the Christian churches all teach. It's not Christianity. It's Paulinity. It's Paulinity. And it really is. And the other thing is the reason I call him his wife is because in my regression, he called her Ishti, which is the Hebrew word and the Aramaic word for wife. He literally called her Ishti. So they're disgusted because it doesn't meet their ideology, which is their chosen belief. But their ideology comes from Paul, who never met Jesus in life and literally peppered the New Testament with Pharisee teachings and apocalyptic end time teachings. So you can't blame them. That's their choice. They're how old are your parents?
Mom is 55.
Okay, so about 6 years younger than me, right?
Yeah, so Dad doesn't believe in all of this. So I told him, why don't you challenge Jesus? So he said that he will not do.
He's scared. Well, the Bible tells you better not. Thou shalt not tempt. Yeah, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God, and He is the direct representative. The thing about the Bible that I find really interesting is the concept of hell is a Christian construct. It does not come from Judaism. It comes from Christianity, and all their whole marketing is all about, we have to save you. Well, what are you saving me from? You're saving me from hell. So you're saving me from something you invented? How's that work? How's that work, right? It's kind of an incestuous religion in that it keeps breeding within itself and keeps changing into the same fear-based ideologies. There's a famous Socrates quote. It says, when the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser.
Mm-hmm.
All of these concepts are just slanders. They're knocking people down for not believing as they do. It's slander, right? Which means they're losing. That's why the congregations are falling away, because we are becoming a more loving world, and the ship is already turning.
Yeah, there was a prophecy that I heard about this being saying that this Pope who came through, that would be the last Pope. That is totally possible, right?
Well, let me tell you, they're leaning into the prophecies of Saint Malachi.
Okay.
Right. And that's the succession of the popes. It's actually in Italy. There's paintings of all the popes, including the last, up to the last one. And Francis was the last one. So the fact that there is a Pope Leo means that prophecy is moot. We're talking a lot about the present moment, right? If you want to find true spirituality, pay attention to who you're listening to. If they're talking about conspiracy theories of the past, or the hidden knowledge you haven't gotten, or the prophecies of the future, neither one of those is in the present I am moment. Neither one. And so what do they do? The prophecies of the past, the hidden knowledge, they sell books. It's an asset. The prophecies of the future sells books. It's an asset. We have to get back to our feelings and just, is it love or is it fear? And just live into the love. And it's worked for me. And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. I get it.
Yeah. Well, it's true, because when I started my podcast, I was very interested in knowing about the birth of the Mother Gaia, and then Andromedans and the star seeds and all of those kind of things. Then what happened was I started to get very anxious. Like I started to binge eat. I started to do these because I was going there and I wanted to escape what's happening here. Then I got back into it. Then something happened. I went for a trip to Maldives and I spent some time in nature, because there's no nature here in UAE. So you have to depend on these meditations.
And you've got buildings and sand, right?
Just buildings and sand. So it's hard. Right, so when I went for the trip, I realized, wow, I did not even need to meditate. I just had to be here. It was done. So now I don't spend my time on these old things or the new things, and I'm trying to be present, because I understood what it means to be grounded.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes in the Bible. Be still and know that I am. And if you change the inflection a little bit, be still and know that I am, the one that's inside of you. Be still and know that I am. And you go into nature, you don't need a method or modality, because that I am is calm and relaxed in that place. It's the feeling of that amazing experience, right? You don't go there and say, oh, look, I'm in this most beautiful place in the world. I better sit down and meditate so I can get there. No, you're already there. It's already a choice that you've already created to feel that way. God speaks to us in feelings, not thinkings. And when we learn to speak in the same language, the infinite universe exposes itself. Because what happens is, I feel something doesn't feel good for me. I go, oh, I'm not doing that. I am doing this loving, good feeling. And I start putting myself into the state of being that loving, good feeling. And then I start having that experience. Something else comes along. Boy, that's crap. Well, I'm not doing it then, because I'm doing this. And I just keep refocusing back to that. Next thing you know, you're living a loving life. You're living a life that's surrounded by people you love, who love you in return, as you're doing great things into the world. Like your podcast is, think about the effect you have. You don't know the effect that you have, right? People are going to watch this podcast, and some of them are not going to buy into any of it. But there's going to be some who are going to find their own divinity within it. And that is a choice that you made to help those people find that. And that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. So keep that going. You know what I mean?
Yep, that's true. John, thank you so much for this wonderful time. I can keep talking to you the whole day. If I had you in the house, I would like keep talking to you, but that's fine.
We'd get some coffee and sit on the back porch and have a great old time.
Yeah, it would have been a lot of fun. John, do you have any final advice for the youth of today, the younger generation?
I do. Understand and this is the first time anyone's asked me to talk to the younger generation there directly, and I appreciate you for doing that. You are already complete. You don't have to lean into expectations of others. Be you to your fullest, show the world who you are, and follow what feels good in your heart. Because when you do that, the universe rewards you by showing you the love in your heart around you. And if you can stay in that space of just being in that beautiful place that you can find at the bottom of every breath, exhale. Just let the fear out. The body holds fear in when it has a fear response. It sucks air in, so we have air to either run or fight. Exhale and let it out, and you've just told the world that you're safe. And so the world can show you that you're safe.
I love that. Thank you so much, John. Can you please tell us where we can find you and all the wonderful work that you do?
Well, the easiest way to find me, of course, is on YouTube. If you look for John of New, you will find me there. I also have a channel called The Recovering Catholic, which is for those people who are dealing with religious trauma from their past. And I have johnofnew.com as well. My sessions are not about telling you what your future will be. It's about bringing you to the present moment, helping you discover what you're creating unconsciously, and breaking you free of that so you can thrive. And, I'm not going to tell you your past life. I'm not going to tell you, read your Akashic records. I'm not going to give you a reading and tell you what your future is to become, because you're the one creating it. And so when you come to me for a session, I sit down, as I said earlier, I write an hour before to tap into the consciousness of the person in front of me. And I just deliver a message. And then the best compliment that I've ever gotten about my sessions is people repeatedly tell me it's like talking to an old friend. And to me, they're comfortable, they can be open, they can be free, and we can share the things that'll break them away out of their fear-based ideologies and into a thriving life.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you do, for making us laugh. Really, you are such a wonderful vibration to be with. And you're the only one-dimensional doorway to the other essence. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what it means either. So
Thank you, John.
Maybe when I cross over next time, they'll tell me so I can go, oh, now I get it. Yeah. Every time I have an epiphany, that's how I went bald. I smacked the hair right off the top. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed our time together, and I'm going to promote this channel to my followers, because you deserve to have a lot of followers.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for watching. Click on one of the videos to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.